Hello, Karen. Good to have you here. Karen, for BBC One's Ripper Street, you composed and performed the music to the opening song of Series 2, Episode 3. So what was shooting Ripper Street like? Maybe we'll start with that.
Wow. Well, it was quite an experience, I can tell you. It's sort of one of those things that happened to me by accident. I was actually living in Finland at the time, of all places, and I was working as an artist in residence over there. And I was contacted by an Irish casting agent to see if I would be free to audition for a little part for a singer. And they said, look, it's right up your street, because I had been doing cabaret at the time, still am actually, but I use the word cabaret, but of course that can mean anything to anybody. But I certainly started out singing songs from that particular era. And so I said, oh, I'd be totally on for that. That sounds great. And then very unusually, they asked for us to audition with, they gave us this old 19th century poem that's anonymous, called Eight Little Whores. And they said, just sing something to it or whatever. And I tried finding songs and, you know, trying to change adapt the words to the music of a different song or whatever, and nothing was working. And I thought, this is a bit, I want to do a good audition, a good self-tape. And in the end, I just decided, it would be much easier for me to make up the music myself. So I did, and I worked it out on my guitar in my room up in where I was staying in Finland and at the time, and I got my musicians to play it, and I dressed up for the part, and I, made a tape and I sent it off, and they really, really liked it. And then when they said, we'll fly you over to Dublin to shoot it, because Ripper Street, as you probably know, was shot in Dublin. And when we were in negotiations, the director who was going to be shooting that particular episode said that he really liked what I had done with the poem, and that he wanted to use that particular melody for the song. And so I got together with my pianist, and I wrote out a chart, and my pianist then put it into, his Sibelius. He managed to put it into, I had written out the chords and the music, and I sang it for my pianist and so on. And so my pianist made a chart, and we sent it off to the show's composer, the director of music for the show, Dominic Scherer. And so for the actual episode, Dominic made a lovely arrangement that was very reminiscent of the era, with lots of brass and horns and so on, and it was great fun. So it was lovely to see that come alive. And so then on the day when we were shooting, on the few days we were shooting, it was quite spectacular, because we'd been brought in for rehearsals and everything. And as I was saying, it was shot in Dublin in disused barracks, army barracks called Clancy Barracks. And they literally transformed this hall into a Victorian music hall. And it was unrecognizable. They built the entire set, and it was so beautiful. So on the day when we were shooting it, it really felt like you were in a Victorian music hall. It was absolutely gorgeous, with the proscenium arch and everything. And then the whole scene was a kind of a very elaborate opening that, in fact, was a sort of a wink heavy, if you like, version of this song was a wink heavy version of trying to say, whoa, Jack the Ripper was such a lad. I mean, it was, obviously in very poor taste for anyone who suffered from what happened. But it was very much of the time, that kind of style, and so I enjoyed performing it. So they went to great lengths to do a little tableau of events and make it quite over the top, deliberately so. So it was a wonderful time.
Yeah, I remember the scene, and of course, not of course, but I also talked a bit to Dominic Scherer once, because I really liked the music, so I got in touch with him too. And this whole soundtrack, basically, the whole Ripper Street soundtrack, including this song, Eight Little Horse, was for some time when I wrote one of my books, it was kind of the soundtrack for this book, because I kept listening to it to get into this mood, into this atmosphere. So
oh my goodness.
Thank you very much. You were also part of that process. Yeah. So, but it was not unusual for you to kind of write and perform a 19th century music hall song.
No, well, it was just one of those things that happened, but I did, certainly growing up, I grew up to that kind of music. My mother's mother grew up in England and had English connections. So basically we grew up with all of those kind of Burlington Bertie, Lily of Laguna, those kind of songs, you know, and we would frequently have sing-songs, you know, around after dinner and things like that, and it was a wonderful time. So I was very familiar with that style of music, you know, and also that style of comedy, actually. And so in my own shows, I tend to try and incorporate comedy and music a lot of the time, because I think they work very well together, actually, you know.
They do, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're a singer, actor, composer, writer, and a diva, as I read on your homepage.
Oh, professional, yeah.
So tell us a bit about you and what you do, Karen.
Well, I guess everything I've done has sort of arrived by accident, because I started out life as a lawyer, and as soon as I qualified as a barrister, I had this moment where I thought, gosh, I wonder, you know, there seems to be something that I want to do, and I'm not quite sure what that is. And again, by accident, while I was waiting to travel to another country and getting a visa to go to, it was either America or Australia, I was waiting to go there for just for a couple of months, I ended up doing an acting course, and the rest is history. Once I enrolled, I really enjoyed it, and I particularly loved the improvisational acting course that we were doing at the time. But yeah, it was super. It was great fun. I think my parents thought she'll grow out of it. So they were, in fact, very supportive. And you know, all these years later, I'm still doing it. So, because out of acting, I really got interested in directing. So in the early stages of acting, I also directed quite a few shows. And then I wrote some shows quite early on as well. So I had if you like, a broad mix of theatre in me when I started doing comedy. I joined this comedy act called the Nualas, and I was with them for a number of years. And that was super, because we got to travel around, you know, to all the different festivals. You know, we were in Edinburgh Festival for many years, but we also went to Australia. And then I just really, from then, I finished with the Nualas, and I really wanted to do my own solo shows. And the difference was that with the Nualas, it was 100% comedy, whereas with my own shows, I wanted to explore the dramatic side of things as well. And so that's how it started, really. I think I started doing the works of trying to interpret some of the songs of, you know, Jacques Brel and Piaf and Weill, and that's how I started off. And then bit by bit, I started sneaking my own songs into the shows, and then, you know, then I recorded my first album, and that was really exciting. And then I recorded my second album, gosh, I don't know how many years later, almost 9 years later, I think it was, when I could afford it.
Yeah. Well, luckily enough, you didn't grow out of it. So,
no.
But I think you would have been a very good barrister. There would have been, I think you probably would have been. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
So what musical and what projects are you currently working on right now?
Well, in 2019, I was lucky enough to get some development money from the Irish Arts Council. And I had this idea to do a project called Warrior, which is a project about, it sort of explores the idea of a patient in a medical environment. And so what I did was I wrote a treatment for the piece and for theatre, and then I worked with some musicians and actors, and together then we presented, I think it was 20 minutes or 30 minutes of the proposed piece in like a rehearsed form, and it went down very well. And then based on that, I got funding to put on the full piece. But then unfortunately, COVID happened, and so everything had to be put on hold. So it's given me a really good opportunity to work a little further on the music. So what I'm actually doing right now, I'm just right beside my piano here, never too far from
you can play a song for us if you like.
Well, it's such a luxury to have one, because for years I was always like traveling around. I would be lucky enough to have the guitar, or sometimes I didn't have any musical instruments, so I would use a tin whistle when I was trying to compose, and then wait till I could get to a place where there was a proper piano. But I've been working on the music for this piece, Warrior, because it's a combination of music. It's a sort of a collaboration between artists and musicians, and there's a lot of music in the piece, but it's a very theatrical piece. And it's sort of, I think I have a feeling that the majority of the work will actually find its way into my new album, actually. Because I'm very interested in, it's a different development from the previous album, and it kind of excites me. It's a fairly serious piece, but with all serious things, that's the moment where I put most comedy into, because I think, with the very dramatic things in life, there are moments where you laugh hysterically, and it's not out of any malice or ill will. It's just life is kind of hysterical at times, and we're just keeping a lid on things sometimes. So I think the idea of a patient being medicalized, how we medicalize death, actually, and how we medicalize grief in a way, is something that really interests me, and all those themes will be dealt with in the piece. So I'm looking forward to it. Finishing the things. I've about 100 songs in my phone already. And I think when I go back to edit them all, I'd say a lot of them are the same song in a different version of the same song. And I think that's the way the brain works sometimes when you're composing.
Right, it does. So when can we expect your next album?
Well, I suppose the impetus for it is to finish this Warrior piece, and once that is done, I think I will then work on bringing the music from that towards a new album. So as soon as I can afford it, really, will be the way.
Yeah. Let me know.
Certainly will.
I'm looking forward to that. So thank you very much, Karen, for this very short interview, one of the first of the mini episodes that I've started. Anything you wanted to say, anything that I forgot to mention, anything that you still want to mention?
No, it's just wonderful to, I think the great wonders of, some of the positives that have come out of the last year really has been the fact that people who don't normally, the wonders of Zoom and technology, that an interview like this can happen, because, a year ago, this was something that wasn't really possible, or if it were possible, not many people knew about it,
Right, yeah.
I think that it has created new links, and it has made the world a smaller place, and that's a good thing, I mean, there's lots of awful things that are happening, and we could talk about those, but I think it's very important right now to focus on the positives. And
you're absolutely right. I thought the same. We got used to it, to talk to people like that, and the world becomes a smaller place. You get in touch with people that you normally wouldn't really think about getting in touch, or where you would think, how I would go over to Ireland to have a talk, probably not, but this way, much easier, and it's still very nice to do it that way. Okay, so thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Phil. It's been an absolute delight.